So this talk is about how well U-weight EBVs are predicting actual U-weight phenotypes on ewe lambs, depending on what the U-weight BVs are calculated from. So over the last few years there's been a fair bit of discussion, I've called it disquiet, about the U-weight penalty and the influence that the dual-purpose adult size sub-index has on the overall index and therefore the ranking of animals. At the last forum I presented the work that I've done on the U-weight economic value, and there was a review done of that by Massey, and there weren't any major flaws identified. So we've gone a bit further and looked at the performance of the breeding values, and so the aim of this was to actually analyse how well U-weight breeding values on young ewe lambs were predicting the actual live weights of those ewes once they grew up. So we took some data from Seoul. We got 41 flocks that were all recording ewe live weight, Bromley, Perrindale, Coopworth and Composite, birth cohorts 2007 to 13, and that gave us about 250,000 ewe live weight records. And then we took breeding values for ewe live weight when the information was based on weaning weight only, and we calculated breeding values for ewe live weight when the information was on weaning weight and live weight age. So it captures two kind of decision points where you've got a ewe weight breeding value and there's a certain amount of information behind it, and you're looking at how well those breeding values actually predict differences in real differences in live weight in adult sheep. So the idea is that we plot ewe weight phenotypes measured at different ages of the animal against the ewe weight EBVs with either weaning weight or weaning weight and live weight 8. Now the expectation is that the slope, the relationship between those phenotypes and the breeding value will be 1, because if a ewe has a breeding value of plus 10, then you expect her to have a phenotype of plus 10 relative to her cohort. If the slope is greater than 1, then that means that the ewe weight EBVs are actually predicting more difference than we're actually seeing in actual live weights. If the slope is less than 1, then that means ewe weight EBVs are predicting less difference than we're actually seeing in adult ewe live weights. So this is one flock year. Each of those dots represents a ewe. On the vertical axis we've got actual raw ewe live weights ranging from 40 to 70 kilos, and on the bottom we've got, in this case, a ewe weight EBV predicted when only weaning weight and live weight 8 information were available. So what you would expect is, what I've got here is I've got a 10 kilogram difference in the breeding value. So as I mentioned before, 10 kilogram difference in breeding value, you would expect a 10 kilogram difference in the actual live weight of the animals at later ages. In this case, what we actually see is that for a 10 kilogram difference in breeding value, we're only seeing an 8.6 kilogram difference in ewe live weight phenotypes later in life. And so that means that the breeding values are predicting more ewe live weight than we're actually seeing. So it's an over prediction, if you like. So for the data, so this is one flock year. What we did was we took all of those 41 flocks across the 2007 to 13 cohorts, and we estimated the slope for all of those flock years. We then got a weighted average so that flocks with more ewes, bigger data set, contributed more to the final result. And then because we've got live weight records for live weight mate 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, we adjusted the average slope to account for the different age structure in the flock. And this is what it looks like. So if you take, in the first column you've got the phenotypic record which we were comparing to, And the second column we've got a weighted mean ewe weight breeding value based on weaning weight only. And on the column on the last column we've got a ewe weight breeding value based on weaning weight and live weight 8. And you can see that when we compare the breeding value with each of the live weight phenotypes, that in each case the slope is less than 1, which means that the breeding values are predicting more live weight difference than we're actually seeing in the adult sheep. And it makes sense that when you add in weaning weight and live weight 8, that over prediction is a little bit less because you've got a little bit more information later in the ewe lamb's life. If we then look at the same slope, so again we've got slopes less than 1, which means across breed, or in the different breeds, there is an over prediction. So the ewe weight BVs again are predicting, the ewe weight BVs calculated early in the ewe lamb's life are predicting a greater difference than is actually seen when those animals grow up and are weighed. So the implications of this work are that if you look across the population or the flocks we took, at least you take an average kind of, and it differs between flocks and years depending on the season and what have you, but on average ewe weight EBVs are actually over predicting by somewhere between 7 and 15%, depending on whether the breeding value is estimated with weaning weight or with weaning weight and live weight 8. And so some adjustments need to be made. The 10% that Cheryl spoke about earlier, the 10% that she put into her index changes was based on the outcome of this research. An interim measure might be to drop the economic weight by 10% to account for this over-prediction. Ultimately, though, it would be best to re-estimate the genetic parameters to actually see what's causing the over-prediction of estimates of genetic merit for ewe weight in young selection candidates when you're making your decisions about which animals to keep.